This video is brought to you by Battlezoo Ancestry's Dragons, the book that lets you play as a dragon. Written by Pathfinder veteran Mark Seifter, this book adds over 45 new dragon playable ancestries to Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Now available at battlezoo.com. Hello and welcome to Chase Mechanics in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. The normal rules provided in the core rules work well for tracking movement during encounters and across short distances that can fit on a game map, but for longer, more epic scenes the GM may want to use the chase mechanics found in the Game Mastery Guide. The chase system focuses on turning moments where characters are either chasing, racing, or being chased into more complex and interesting scenes than simply counting how many squares a mini can move on its turn. This system moves away from the focus being whoever has the highest speed score wins, and towards whoever can best overcome the obstacles in their way wins. These obstacles can be just about anything that would prevent a character from easily progressing. A chase in a city might have obstacles like a fence blocking off an alleyway, a funeral procession blocking the road, or guards on the lookout. And a chase in the wilderness might have obstacles like muddy trails, a wasp nest, or dense thickets and thorns. Each obstacle notes the number of chase points that need to be earned in order to overcome them, and should also provide at least 2 actions that can be used to earn chase points. These are usually skills, but can also be perception checks, saving throws, or even an attack roll depending on the circumstance. Typically, the number of chase points needed to overcome an obstacle will be 1 per player, and the group works as a team accumulating points for the entire group rather than individually. So for example, if the players are being chased by guards through a city, the GM might present a crowded market square as an obstacle. If we look at the stat block for a crowd, we see it takes 4 chase points to overcome, and I believe this is assuming a standard 4-player party, and it says that players can use either acrobatics or athletics against DC 15 or society against DC 13 to navigate their way past the crowd. Although chases do not progress in 6-second rounds like with encounter mode, there is still an initiative order and characters act in turns. Whichever team is being chased goes first in initiative. So if the players are being chased by guards, each of those players get to take a single turn, and then everyone chasing them takes a turn. Note that by default, the chase rules in 2nd edition assume that the entire party of players sticks together and works as a team to overcome each obstacle one at a time, rather than managing the challenges individually and having some players progress faster than others. On each player's turn, they describe within the narrative what they wish to do to progress past the obstacle, and they get to roll 1 check. In the case of crowds, acrobatics, athletics, and society are offered as suggestions. A success earns the team 1 chase point. A critical success earns 2 chase points, and a critical failure costs the team 1 chase point. Once enough chase points have been earned, the party as a whole makes their way past the obstacle and progresses to the next one. There may also be times when certain actions just automatically earn a success. For example, a player might cast a spell that makes the obstacle inconsequential. Maybe they cast a spell and fly over the crowd. In such a case, that player automatically earns 1 chase point. They don't roll a check and they cannot fail, but they also cannot earn a critical success. Also note that each turn during a chase may take several minutes depending on the nature of the obstacle and the distance being traveled between the obstacles, and that should be taken into account when managing the duration of spells. Also note that players should always have the freedom to do whatever they believe is most appropriate given the situation. Maybe a player wants to use intimidation to demand the crowd move aside and let them through. Or a player wants to throw some coins to the side so people move away from where they're running, or since this is a marketplace crowd, they might use their lore merchant skill to find a different shortcut through the stalls. These are all valid options and should be encouraged, even if they're not listed as available skills in the obstacle stat block. These cases will call for some improvisation by the GM, who will need to assign an appropriate check to be rolled and a DC for it. In many cases, the DC may be slightly higher than those represented on the obstacle stat block, as they are likely not the most obvious or simplest solutions. Also be aware that obstacles should be treated as individual adversaries, meaning that chase points are not carried over from one obstacle to the next. However, if an obstacle is defeated and there are players who have not yet taken their turns this round, play continues and those players may attempt to overcome the next challenge. The first step in designing a chase scene is to determine what type of chase is going to be. In a chase down, the players are trying to catch someone who is fleeing from them. Typically, the enemies in a chase down will start one objective ahead of the players and will go first in initiative. If the players can move to the same obstacle as the enemies before the enemies complete the final obstacle, then they catch them. The second type of chase is run away. This is a reverse chase down. In a runaway, the players are attempting to flee from chasing enemies. The players lose this chase scene if their pursuers ever catch up to them, and they win the runaway chase if they complete the final obstacle or are ever at least 3 obstacles ahead of their pursuers before being caught. The third type of chase is beat the clock. This occurs when the players are either in a race where neither group is trying to catch the other, or when there is a time limit, such as outrunning a natural disaster or a collapsing dungeon. Typically in a beat the clock scene, there is a time limit noted in a number of rounds, and the players must finish the final obstacle before that time runs out. A good guideline when building a beat the clock chase is to design 1 obstacle per round of the time limit. And the last type of chase is the competitive chase. As the name implies, this is when the party and their enemies are both chasing after something, whether it be a third person who is fleeing from both groups, or they are trying to get to the finish line of a race first. This works like beat the clock, except instead of a time limit, the scene ends when either party finishes the final obstacle or catches their target. And since both the players and their enemies are pursuers, they may need to roll initiative for each group to determine which of those groups goes first. There are no hard rules for this, so the GM will need to determine what the modifiers for the initiative checks will be, if any. Once you know what type of chase you'll be running, it's time to build the obstacles. A short chase should have about 6 obstacles, 8 for a medium chase, and long chases call for about 10 obstacles. When choosing obstacles, try to build a variety that will allow everyone an opportunity to shine, not just experts in athletics and acrobatics. Once you have selected the obstacles for the scene, assign 2 proposed methods of overcoming each objective to earn chase points. And again, try to use a variety of options. If you've already selected stealth as one of the options, then assigning thievery as the other option doesn't really help, because characters who are good at thievery are very likely the same characters who are good at stealth. On the other hand, offering athletics as an alternative gives a fighter who's terrible at stealth a way to help out. Also, don't assume that every obstacle is a physical threat. Especially in an urban environment, you might need diplomacy or intimidation to convince a crowd to move out of the way, or nature to find the easiest path through a mess of brambles. You can also use saving throws or attacks to overcome obstacles as well. Maybe there's a shortcut through a burning building, but you have to pass a fortitude save to make it through. Or there is a plank suspended over a stream, and a ranged attack roll will allow you to throw a dagger to cut the rope and drop the plank so you can run across. When you set the DCs for an obstacle, you'll typically be using simple DCs, but can also use a proficiency rank appropriate for the party's level if you want the obstacle to be more challenging, and is a good guideline for one of the checks to have an easy or very easy adjustment to its DC. And again, always allow your players to improvise. The 2 solutions that you provide with the obstacle are likely the most obvious solutions, but if a player wants to try something else, let them. Just set a DC as normal, but don't adjust it to be easy or very easy, because if a player is choosing to do something different, then they likely have a higher bonus to that check than the checks that are offered by the obstacle. Chases in 2nd edition assume that the party of players sticks together, and those who are strong in the challenge help those who are not. but there is a variant option provided where it's every player for themselves. In a solo chase, the players act individually instead of as a group, meaning that they can split up. Some players may move through the obstacles faster than the others, or even split up if the chase is designed with a branching structure. The downside of this is it increases the likelihood of one player getting stuck on an obstacle that they are not well suited for. When running a chase scene using the solo rules, each character only needs to earn one chase point to overcome any obstacle, and on a critical success, they overcome their current obstacle and gain a +2 circumstance bonus against the next obstacle. When running a chase scene, it's often easiest to write the details of each obstacle on index cards and use them with miniatures to track the player's progression. Each card should display the 2 suggested means of overcoming the obstacle, but always remember that players should not be limited to these 2 suggestions. They may be the most obvious solutions, but if the player wants to try something else, let them. You might also find yourself in a situation where the players get stuck on an obstacle. When this happens, a good suggestion is to let them progress after their 3rd failed attempt. The explanation could be that they find some other way around the obstacle, or an external force like a helpful NPC arrives to render them assistance. Usually, it's best for the final obstacle of a chase scene to be something terminal, a finish line of sorts. If the players are chasing a bandit, maybe the final obstacle of the scene leads to a hideout. If the PC's ever occupying the same obstacle as the bandit, then they catch him and the scene transitions into a combat encounter. If the bandit overcomes the final obstacle before the players catch him, then he rushes into the hideout and the scene changes into a dungeon crawl as the players investigate the hideout. And typically, if the person or party that is being pursued ever gets 3 obstacles ahead of their pursuers, then the pursuers lose track of them and they get away. So there you have it. As always, I'd like to take a quick moment to thank everyone who supports this channel by liking the video, subscribing to the channel, subscribing to the Patreon, leaving comments, sharing the videos with your friends. Everything the community does to support me is greatly appreciated. And with that, thanks for watching, take care, and happy gaming.